So thank you very much, Kyle. My name is Darroch Harrop. I'm the Manager of Policy Development with the Center for Rural Economic Development within the Federal Government Department of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. So I'm actually joined in the audience there by one of our colleagues from our team, Sarah Minnis, who is, I believe, known to many of you as a once and always surfer. So just to point her out there, she's a very important member of our team and certainly keeps us grounded in reality. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today. And first of all, I would just want to say, as I mentioned, we're within the Federal Government Department of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. Those of us of a certain age will know that the rural development file has bounced around the federal government to various points over the years. At some point, it was at the Department of Agriculture as the former Rural Secretariat. Later on, it was refounded as a different Center for Rural Economic Development within the Department of Infrastructure. And now since 2021, it's over here. So I'll be able to speak today about a bit of what we do here, how we do it, how we're structured, and all of that. So very much pleased to have been invited today. Sorry could not come in person, very much wanted to, but unfortunately timing and various workload pressures for us did not allow, but certainly hoping to for next year, because it's a very important conference, and I'm very sorry to be missing all the great conversations and presentations that are going on over the last couple of days and tomorrow. So a couple of objectives for me today. One is to raise awareness, first of all, of what we are, who we are, what we do. Like I said, we're an organization that in our current form has been formed in about 2021, and we're still looking to get our name out there, build connections, build networks, and getting to know folks. As well as really building on that, signaling our intent to be collaborative, constructive partners with the research community, with the stakeholder community, with basically anybody with an interest in rural. We want to talk to you. So we'll have our contact information at the end, but just this is our key focus of the presentation today, is to really get our name out there and to help demystify what we do at the federal government level with respect to rural economic development, because it's certainly a very important file for us. And I would also say that you may be familiar with Minister Goody Hutchings, who is our Minister of Rural Economic Development at the federal level. But the objective here with this presentation is to speak to the officials that support her, the public servants, the folks that are there, regardless of what the government of the day happens to be, whether it be liberal, conservative, NDP, whatever. We will be there, and it's our job to kind of be that continuity and to be this working level voice that folks can always communicate with for information on how we approach rural within the federal government. So on our next slide, just a bit of an outline. I have two pieces that we're going to discuss today. One, like I said, introduction to CenRED, as we call it, unpacking a bit of who we are, and then moving on to a bit about brass tacks of how we actually work to bring a rural perspective to federal government initiatives, a bit about what we do. So in a nutshell, CenRED, our job is to coordinate a whole of government approach to advancing the federal government's priorities with respect to rural economic development, which of course are many, and to provide the direct support to the Minister of Rural Economic Development, which, as I mentioned, is Goody Hutchings. So we are her primary support as minister, and basically we are the folks who are the key support for her in delivering on her mandate, on engaging across government on all things rural, be it housing, be it infrastructure, be it health services, be it whatever you can name that has a rural dimension to it. Trust me, we are there. The one thing that we do not do within CenRED at least is broadband connectivity, which is actually led by a different part of our department, but still led by Minister Hutchings. So we very much are kind of the voice for rural, the rural conscience, as you might call it, within the federal government. We are the folks that we don't lead programs ourselves. We are very much folks that deal with different departments and agencies and help them bring a rural perspective to the work that they do, help their programs, help their initiatives all work better for rural communities and help them better reach and better meet their objectives. So I'll expand on that a little bit, but first of all, what I'd like to say is that unlike perhaps other teams within the federal government, we actually have a bit of a cross-country footprint, And that includes staff who are based not only in Ottawa, as I happen to be, but also folks who are based on the ground in rural communities across the country who work full-time remotely. And it's their job to be on the ground, to meet with folks and relay that information back for us basically to go act upon and to advocate within the federal system to do. So you'll see on this slide three different little bits that we do. One, as I mentioned, is working with other departments to ensure the needs and the realities of rural Canadians are considered when developing federal programs and policies, and I can expand on that later. But also a bit of a two-way engagement. One is providing stakeholders, communities with information, tools, and advice about the federal supports that might be available to them, because a big problem that we have certainly encountered is that a community may have a certain problem, and there may well be a federal service that can support them, funding that might be available, but it just might not be known to them. So our job is to be that one-stop shop that folks can come to, and they can come to us and we can help them navigate, provide a bit of a pathfinder service is what we called it, to help them find their way and find programs that they can apply to, identify barriers and roadblocks and all of that, so we can help them really unlock their potential that way. The other aspect of that, of course, is engaging with rural Canadians, with academia, with industry, with community associations, with everybody you can think of pretty much, on how we can take that information back into the federal system, as I mentioned, and improve program delivery to better meet rural needs. There's a number of roadblocks that we've certainly encountered over the years. There's different best practices that we've identified, and all of that has come from our engagement with stakeholders and folks on the ground who really live and breathe this stuff every day, and that helps inform our work. So within CenRED, our team is about 15 people, and we're divided into 3 teams, one of which, the policy team, is the one that I lead, and that our job is that policy advocacy, working with other departments to help them better address rural needs within their programs, their policies, all of that. We provide guidance, education, advice on how they can do that. Engagement, we also support our national ministerial and senior management engagement across the country. So a big thing there is that anytime that Minister Hutchings happens to go on an engagement tour, we are the ones who support her, help to organize it, and help to provide the information that she might need to support that. And then as well is our team of rural advisors, and this is something that is a little bit unique about what we do, and that's these are our folks who are really based, as I mentioned, across the country, different parts, and their job is really to go out and engage on a regional basis and to talk to communities and relay that information back. Like I said, that intelligence, here's what I heard from this community, here's how this program is really shaping out in this area, and how we can better improve that, issues that might be encountered just by talking to folks. So we have a bit of between those 3 prongs, we all work very collaboratively together. All of them really help to support each other, and yeah, so it all really comes together. I'll point to a couple of key focus areas. As I mentioned, really, if there is a rural dimension to something that is going on across government, trust me, we are there, and it means that we are every day very, very busy. But look at all these issues that we deal with, and this is just really a list of examples. There's housing, there's labor and immigration, there's tourism, there's air access, there's data issues, there's climate mitigation, climate resilience, capacity issues, rural transit infrastructure. We have a very wide network across government, and our name is starting to really get out there. And it's really a matter of just knocking on doors and saying, like, hey folks, have you thought about this? And how can we work together to help you better reach your priorities and make things work for rural. So this is really just to give a sense of all the different things that we do. Moving right along, I'll really unpack that a little bit. So how we actually work to bring a rural perspective to federal initiatives. Um, First, I would want to start with question number one that we are always asked. When we're looking to design a program for eligibility reasons, um, unfortunately, we have the challenge of coming up with a definition of the word rural. And this is always a bit of a challenge for us. There's many different definitions if you're a stats person that you can use. Stats Canada itself has two different definitions. There's also an index of remoteness. There's population cutoff that you can use. And that obviously encounters a number of issues that doesn't capture necessarily the diversity of rural communities. The fact that what is rural in one area of the country might not be in another. I think of Southern Ontario, where I'm from, what is considered rural would certainly be considered a much larger population center in other parts of the country. This is something that we need to keep in mind. It's very difficult to come up with a single definition that pleases everybody, and everybody who considers themselves rural can see themselves in. So it's very tough to be able to define that. But what we do is we work with our colleagues across government to figure out what might be the best option for what they are looking to do, and helps meet their needs, have the widest possible eligibility, and all of that. But if you deal with me, then you would know that I have a bit of a 5 to 10 minute rant on the subject that I will not subject you guys to. But trust me, this is something that we deal with very often. So I will move on to the next one, which is how we look to apply what some people might refer to as a rural lens or rural proofing within the federal government. Because we kind of do this in two ways. One is through our direct engagement with federal departments. This is me or Sarah or somebody else going out and talking to a department. And like I said, saying, how have you thought about this? Or here's this issue that we're hearing about on the ground. How can we work together to resolve it? But the other point is that since we are a team that's only so large and the federal government is very large, there's a lot of different scope of responsibilities and different things that go on. We're also working with the Department of Women and Gender Equality on what they call gender-based analysis plus. And this is a mandatory analytical framework that exists in the federal government, and I believe is also used in a number of provinces and territories, as well as elsewhere, to better inform policy. So you can not just look at gender. It really, as I describe it, is about the plus. It's about all the different identity factors that goes into how a person exists. And so that might be in terms of race, that might be in terms of class, that might be in terms of disability, that might be in terms of a whole lot of different things. But one of the things that we've been directly tasked as part of the minister's mandate letter is to make sure that this analytical framework, which is quite robust, also really appropriately captures rurality as a unit of analysis. So this is something that we're working very closely with them to do. And this is the vehicle by which we are advancing that rural lens, the rural guidance that we're looking to provide in writing to our federal colleagues. To expand on that a little bit, so our team is very much currently focused on enhancing and developing new rural guidance tools, guides, and training for public servants within the government so that they can refer to it on their own time. They can use that to inform their policy proposals and all of that. And the key reason for this is that most of the policy analytical capacity that exists within the federal government are people like me. We're based here in Ottawa, and that means there's a lot of people who don't come from a rural background themselves, and so they might not have a full awareness of the issues at play, about how about what unintentional barriers that might be setting up. For example, they might be like, oh, it must make sense to have this 100-page application form for a program, and we need all this information. Of course we do, and nobody will have any problem filling this out. Or all these data requests for various reporting reasons that we might put on an applicant. That won't be a problem. Everybody's going to have information disaggregated down to a certain level, right? Of course. So that's sometimes an unintentional barrier, and it's something that is not always completely understood. So it's our job to make sure that is understood, and that's the reason we're developing that guidance materials. And this isn't, and these little things aren't a small thing because they really make a difference in terms of success and failure for the development of policy and programs. Because if a program might be intended to benefit all, but if you have these little barriers, that means that the 20 odd percent of the population that is rural in the country, they immediately are not able to access it and forget about it. You have now made your program not as successful as it could be. So it's our job really to help improve that. So I know I'm running out of time a little bit, so I'll skim over this slide a little bit. But these are some of the barriers that we really do encounter that are facing rural communities, and this is not a exhaustive list, but this is very much a number of ones that are that we encounter in program design on a daily basis. Various capacity constraints, access to high-speed internet for information that's only available online, or application forms that are only available online, awareness of programs, as I mentioned, eligibility thresholds, and data gaps. That's an issue. And then also just in a broader way, different place-based regional differences that might exist within different communities and need to be considered in the design of policy. So to that end, we've identified a number of best practices that we do advocate for with our colleagues, looking, for example, to make funding as flexible, and you can use it for as many different things as possible, and then allow communities to use certain degrees of funding for capacity building issues, for program delivery. You want to make sure that various accessibility challenges are recognized. Provide that pathfinding service that I mentioned, keeping track of uptake, and if it is lower than you expected, really interrogate why that might be, as well as doing very proactive engagement with rural Canadians in different forms, and not just through online virtual engagement, but physically going out to a community perhaps, or having a phone number available that folks can reach out to, and making sure that programs have a certain degree of time for folks to be able to apply to, and to be able to fully really think through their application while recognizing all the different things that a very small rural municipality with limited capacity might be able to deal with. And then various adaptability issues on how we on how programs are designed. One other thing that I'm going to give a bit of a plug to before closing off, and I know this has been a bit of a whirlwind, and I'm always very happy to expand on any piece of this, is a partnership that we have with Statistics Canada. And they have online a rural data hub, and this is a source of basically all of the data that the federal government has available that relates to different rural things. It is somewhat of a work in progress. This is something that is really started to evolve over the last little while. But we contribute a certain degree of money to them for them to maintain this portal, for them to enhance the data accessibility on it, and all of that. So I know they certainly have some work in the future about making more data sets available, different disaggregation for rural things, and this is one of the minister's mandate commitments to achieve that. But this is something I did want to give a plug to. It is available on the rural data hub. If you just Google it, you'll be able to find it. There's quite a wealth of different data sets that are available on it. I know that this particular website is not as well known as it should be, so I always try to give this little plug about it's there, it's a resource that's available to you, and hopefully it is helpful to some. So just in closing off, as I said at the start, we really do want to hear from you guys. We do want to engage with the broader community. We want to get our name out there, and we want your expertise to help us in making federal initiatives work better for rural communities. So you can see we have a couple of email addresses here. One is our main inbox here, which is rural@ised.ca. isde.gc.ca, so English and French. And then you also have 3 specific ones there. One, my director, Melanie Colai, and so her last name recently changed from Hilda Colai, so her name has not changed in her email just yet. That's the reason for that. But also mine and Sarah's, please do feel free to reach out at any time. We are more than happy to hear from you and would love to continue the conversation. So we'll stop there.